bit, and after a while, we're going to throw it open to the floor, and I hope you brought some questions with you or some comments of your own, those of you who knew Waylon, whatever. We'll be glad to get everybody involved as much as they want to be. I'll start down at this end. A lot of you already met Dave Hickey, was the keynote speaker a little bit earlier. Dave is a native of Fort Worth. He's currently a professor of art criticism and theory at University of Nevada, Las Vegas for the last decade. Author of several books on popular culture and fine arts. Wrote a lot in the mid-'70s for various music publications like Rolling Stone, Country Music, Cream, Village Voice, and so forth. Dave was chronicled Waylon quite a bit for Country Music magazine. Did several articles, spent a lot of time with him during those years for that particular magazine. On my immediate left here is Lenny Kaye. Lenny was Lenny was in rock bands in New Jersey, where he's from, in the 60s. In the late 60s, early 70s, was one of the early wave of rock critics in New York. Mid 70s, started playing guitar with Patti Smith, and basically still does all that stuff. Patti took a long time off and started working again a few years ago. Lenny's back to playing guitar with her. He's currently working on a book on Russ Columbo and 30s crooners. He's done a little production work. He's taught rock and roll history at Rutgers University. He's compiled some albums, most infamously the Nuggets collection of 60s garage bands that was recently expanded and released by Rhino as a box set. On my immediate right here is Richie Albright, who needs no introduction, really. He began playing drums with Waylon in '64 and stayed with him right up until the end earlier this year. Co-wrote with him, co-produced with him, currently leads a Way More Blues band. Is that correct? Okay, and so he played with Waylon about as long as anyone did, as anyone could have, really. To his right is Buddy Jennings. Buddy is Waylon's second son, born here in Lubbock, 1960. Has worked as an engineer for Marty Stewart, as a stage manager for his father, and is now with Gibson Guitars in Nashville. Yeah. Great. Okay. Next one down there is Billy Joe Shaver. Billy Joe's originally from Corsicana. In '73, he released his first album called Old Five and Dimers, produced by Chris Christopherson. That same year, Waylon cut an entire album, save for one song, called Honky Tonk Heroes of Billy Joe's songs. A really remarkable achievement for someone who was, not very well known at that time as a writer.
Just come to town.
Yeah, and that album, of course, is widely considered to be the first, possibly, certainly one of the very first of the so-called outlaw movement in country in the '70s with Waylon and Willie and Tom Paul Glaser and so forth. Billy's got a band. They're playing later this afternoon over at the Buddy Holly Center. You want to go over there and check him out? And he's still writing and singing really great Texas stuff. And at the end there, next to Billy Joe, is Billy Ray. That's Billy Ray Reynolds. And Billy Billy Ray played with Waylon from 66 to 76.
Oh, no.
Really watershed years there. He just...
fired him over the day.
Yeah. We can talk about that in a minute. He just released an album of his own on Compadre Records called A Whole Lot of Memories. Compadre will be also releasing Billy Joe's next record, I believe.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
I'm headed for Nashville to do it.
Yeah.
About 3 more days.
So that's the panel, and just to get things started here, I wanted to throw this out to the various panelists and see what each of them has to say about this. Waylon, left West Texas relatively early on, and but West Texas never really left Waylon. I don't think anyhow. I think a lot of his attitude, that sort of stick to your guns attitude that really made Waylon stand out and really shaped his music as well, is a real West Texas thing. And that he took that with him to Phoenix, to Los Angeles, to Nashville, everywhere. So I'm wondering if any of the panelists have anything to say about the extent to which West Texas was a part of Waylon's music and his whole way of presenting it and doing business and so forth. Anyone want to jump on that?
I'd say one thing, he didn't have anything against West Texas, it was the cotton fields that he didn't like.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
He had one job, one public job, he told me driving a cement truck and he turned it over the first day.
In the mayor's yard,
Sure.
great place to turn over. a
He
truck.
said that the reason that he thought West Texas was dominant music was every house had a guitar and that somebody played it, and that's the only thing there was to do besides pick cotton.
And Richie, you were saying a little bit earlier about that he really remained involved with this area long after he left in various ways.
He thought a lot about the area and the things that wasn't going on here, really. I think he was very instrumental in getting the statue done for Buddy and for some of the things that are going on now today. It was actually Waylon's idea to get that they were started.
He actually did the first show that built it in this building. And
Yeah.
that was the show that they used to erect the statue.
Of which he would not take any money for, like mine is.
And he was involved in various other local sort of
Yeah, there was
causes, anonymously more or less.
Yeah, I think there's a boys' ranch somewhere around here that he donated a lot of money to, and he wouldn't take money when he came to Lubbock. He wouldn't do it.
Do any of the panelists feel like this is his music is really West Texas music, or that had a lot to do with the sound of it, or was that strictly Waylon's own?
Well, it depends on how you define the area. I think there's a lot of musics that come through here that made him what he is. There's a lot of music from across the border. He had that kind of weird little Latin twist to some of his music, and I think he also was inspired by a lot of the rockabilly around here. To me, his secret influence is Roy Orbison. There's a lot of Roy in his singing, and especially when he reached for those high notes. He loved folk music. This is a crossroads of a lot of stuff, and certainly Buddy's example of kind of picking and choosing from all the local musics helped him put together this kind of weird amalgam, which wasn't really country and wasn't really folk and wasn't really rock and roll. We're all kind of a product of our environment. And I think one of Waylon's things was that, he liked having something to push against. He liked having, something to chew on, and in his kind of, I love this place, I don't like this place, I picked cotton here, I had wacky times here. He really never left it, and you can feel it in him. I think he's definitely a West Texas guy.
Yeah, I think the thing that seemed most West Texas to me about Waylon was that I know most of the Southerners I know that were singers in Nashville lived in absolute terror of being poor. And they were scared of being poor in the morning, scared of being poor at night, and the worst thing you could have be poor because then you're back the class ladder. And I really got the impression that Waylon was not afraid to do something that might end up poor, so I would just do it again. And I think that comes from living in this part of the country, which is more of democracy than the South, in which, you know, the members of town are ranked from 1 to 300,000. And he had a lot more relaxed attitude about the possibility of failure, which if you live in West Texas is something you better have.
Always a possibility. And he did spend a lot of time here early on as you know, as a DJ who was supporting a family on virtually no money, as I recall. And I think he had plenty of experience with that feeling that you're talking about, that, you know, if it came back to that, he could handle it.
I'd say at the age of 12, he has a radio show, that I would think that he had a lot to do with the molding of this particular area himself at an early age. And whatever it turned out to be, he was a prominent figure in what he turned out to be, even as far as Buddy Holly went. I'd say when he started at 12, he started something, because he put his personality and stuff into it, and it went on from there. And to me, he's the largest man I've ever known, the greatest guy I've ever known. To me, all the way across the board, the opera singers and everything, he's the greatest singer I've ever heard in my whole life, and probably ever will hear. That's that.
Do you hear much of Waylon and people that have come out of
Yes,
West Texas?
They're trying. They're trying.
It's not just people come out of West Texas.
No, they're all
Well, of
over
course,
the place.
yeah.
They're working their butts off, but they ain't making it, but they're trying.
First time I ever heard the group Alabama, we were going down the road on the old black bus, and there was the radio on, and Tennessee River came on, and the first 16 bars sounded like a Waylon Jennings record. And I thought, well, they're trying to lift our style. And they did a pretty good job, too.
Well, after Buddy died, Waylon has talked various times in interviews about, you know, how badly he felt about that, and actually left the music business for a while over it. Came back here, I guess was back to DJing and living a pretty anonymous life. Did he talk about that very much, Buddy or Richie or some of you that go way back with him? Did that really have a huge impact on him?
It had a huge impact, but it's something we didn't talk about a lot.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think it was only 2 or 3 years ago that when he said he made the statement to Buddy when they traded the mix about, I hope your bus freezes up, hope your plane crashes. As long as I've known Waylon, he never told me that, never said that once. And that was something that I knew there was something he was carrying with him, you know. So it was a large impact on him. It really was.
I mean, actually, he told me that for the book, you know,
That's
because
the first time he said it.
coming out, well, I don't
He
know
never
whether-
said it to anybody.
But I know that, you know, for me, as a rock and roller, finding out what happened on the Winter Dance Party was like my #1 objective. And I remember sitting in his kitchen the night we did it, and we talked for 3 or 4 hours, and we traced the whole Buddy saga, you know, from, you know, when he's sitting in the apartment in New York, and Buddy's writing, you know, his last songs, and through the whole bus, and you know, I had the itinerary, so we went through everything, and it was really, when we finished, I could just see that he had just gotten it out. I mean, and he told me then, he said, yeah, I never talked about that in such detail. And I could feel, you know, the hairs going because, you know, we were there. You know, he was like, and I know that, you know, what it was that he felt like maybe he had something to do with it psychically. That he'd been given this great gift to go off, that Buddy had offered him the world, and that he lost it. And, you know, again, if you're, you know, just out of the cotton fields, maybe you think, how many chances do you have that this kind of thing comes along? and to have it just taken away from you, it must have been really, yes, like you're saying, you know, maybe it was like he was poor again, and he wasn't getting out. And this person who had offered him so much was gone, you know. It must have been really psychically.
Jesse said that he didn't speak to her about it that much, that she never, the most she ever heard him say is when him and Lanny wrote the book. And that's just something that he didn't talk about, and you didn't ask him about it. He would avoid going around Clear Lake, Iowa, if he was going up that way.
Yeah.
He would detour out of the way. And then he played up there, and they came to him and told him that they had a date in Clear Lake, Iowa. And they didn't tell him where it was, and he didn't realize where it was till he walked in the door. He was not a happy camper.
I don't suppose so.
We were playing in Australia with my band. My son was with me, and we were playing in front of Willie and Waylon, and we were due to go to Perth. And we had to fly there because it's over the outback, you know. And this kind of raggedy-looking plane come driving up, and Waylon said, "Oh, damn it! I told that promoter I'm not flying in that." Boy, he got mad as hell, you know, because he just didn't like to fly. And I said, "Waylon, that can't be." I said, "There's a big jet over there," and sure enough, here comes a trolley. He's going to take us over to that jet. And we walked down there, and Jesse was with Waylon, you know, trying to keep him calm. And we got over to the jet, and we was walking up it. And Waylon was in front of Jesse, and I was behind Jesse. We got about 4 rings up that thing, and I started singing "Chantilly Ladies." And I mean, he came over Jesse and hit me. And I mean, I had to take off running because he couldn't catch me, you know, because he was going to wipe the ground with me. I mean, he was mad as no way to end. But he finally lightened up and started laughing. I said, "I'll never do that again." Jesse, boy, she got on me big time. Sorry, son. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I can just remember him, you know, mentioning it in passing in various interviews, you know, back in the 70s and stuff, just sort of mentioning in passing how badly he felt about it. But I don't think he ever did really talk about it in any detail until
I mean, I'm not
he
sure
and
we
Lenny
would
did
have gotten
this.
to it, except we had this, like, we were really, like, on this roll, and you could just see him just kind of lost in the memory. And, you know, I knew all the personalities on the thing, so I could ask him about Dion and what was happening here, and we just kind of, and then when, you know, when it came out, I mean, I never heard that in my life. And I thought, that is just too,
Richie, when you first met him and started playing with him, when you first met him, he was on hiatus, correct? He was still not back from.
He was playing in Phoenix.
He was playing again
Yeah.
when you first met him.
Yeah,
He had started fairly recently, or
Yeah.
because he did stop for several years there, right?
Yeah, so when he moved to Phoenix, he started playing in a couple of clubs around there. He was in Coolidge, Arizona first,
Mhm.
and then to Golden Goose,
Yeah.
Golden
Yeah.
Goose. And then he moved up to Phoenix and took a job at a little place called Frankie's, which is about a third the size of this room. And I went down there, met through a mutual friend, told me about it. This guy who played kind of different stuff, but didn't have a drummer. So I took my drums down one time just to meet him. And that was the first time we met. That was in 1962.
Mhm.
And then he came to Prescott, Arizona, where I was playing with another band to alternate bands through a rodeo weekend. And so I played about 3 days with him there. That's when the music connection kind of started right there.
Mhm. Was he? Did he talk about having sat out a few years and stuff, and had just been back at it fairly recently, or was?
Not until later on,
Yeah.
after I went to work with him, you know,
Uh-huh.
64, and you know, and a little bit came up about the crash, and he just didn't want to do music for a while,
Mhm.
you know.
He didn't say anything else about what he was doing during this downtime, or
No,
what he
I
was
think
thinking, how
took
he was
some odd-
feeling?
Took some odd jobs, And I think he was kind of interested in DJ work more than anything during that time.
Yeah, I think he did, he came back to DJ and Level Land or something like that, I believe.
Yeah. When did he go to KLL, right?
He came back right after Buddy got
Was it
killed.
after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stayed
And
there.
how long was that for?
He stayed that time about 3 or 4 months, and then he went to Arizona. I tried to make a salesman out of him, if you can imagine.
Yeah, good luck.
Now, he came to us and said, "Hey, guys, Buddy was paying me $200 a week, and you guys only paying me $90." And we said, "That's all we can afford to pay you, and barely pay you that." And he said, "But High Pockets," the guy, one of Buddy's good friends, said, "You can do like High, we'll go sell, and we'll pay you for your air work." And so my job was to take Waylon to sell. And so we made a few calls, and his time to make the pitch, and he's sitting there, and he says, "Hoss, you tell him." And so we got the car, and Waylon, he called it Hoss. I guess he used that from all his life.
Everybody.
He said, "Hoss, I ain't ever gonna make a salesman." I said, "Hoss, you're right. You better get the pitch." Imagine trying to make a salesman out of it.
So how long were you working there in Arizona with him before record deals came?
I started with him in '64, and we went to Nashville in like December of 1965 to record the first album. So, and we had to do one for A&M to get out of that contract.
Right.
Before that. So,
And that was a little bit more folk oriented type
Yeah.
album, right?
yeah.
Was that what he was doing live at the time? Was that sort of what he was playing,
Yeah.
or
It was
Was that-
it was a variation of Beatles, Bob Dylan, some folk stuff, hardly any real pop country stuff, some older things, Carl Smith, you know. We did just what he wanted to do, and to Roy Orbison, we did some Orbison tunes, and it was really great, because it was just out of the norm.
so during that time in Arizona, he wasn't really playing a lot of straight ahead country. He was all over the map.
Yeah, he was just, and drawing people in. I mean, that place was packed. It held 1,500 people upstairs, and it was packed 6 nights a week.
When did he go? I know he never did completely, obviously, but when did he start? Going more towards more country.
Well, I guess it's after the move to Nashville, and they had to put a label on him, so he was the first thing that they called folk country. And but he was, he still did some kind of a lot of tunes he wrote, and then things that Chet wanted him to do, and things like that.
And he still slipped in an occasional pop song and so forth.
Yeah, Beatles tunes, yeah, Rolling Stones, yeah, yeah.
What was that?
MacArthur's Park.
Yeah, MacArthur's Park.
Yeah.
One of the first times I ever saw him, before I started with the band, he was doing Scarborough Fair. I thought it was one of the greatest pieces I'd ever heard. And that was far from being country.
Yeah. Yeah, that side of him didn't get on record that much.
No,
Not really.
A little bit.
There was a lot of times when we'd be playing, we never knew what he was going to do next. It was there was never a set list. The whole time I knew it or anything like that. So we went off. We knew we were going to start usually with the only daddy that walked the line, but after that we were on our own. And then when I started with him, I'd pretty well learned all of his songs, most of them, and he kept telling me, he said, there'd be people like Phil Spector would be out in the audience, and Spector would be antagonizing him, heckling him. And he was the wittiest person I've ever seen. He could handle a crowd or somebody like that with the greatest of ease. But he would turn around, he told me one day, he said, when these people start talking to me, my mind just goes out the window, and I get to think about talking to them, so I can't think of what the next song is. So always have me a song ready. A lot of times we would be passing each other, and I'd say something out there, like the last letter or something. He'd just turn the wheel and walk back to the mic and sing it. It looked like it was real spontaneous, but he could sing anything, anytime, all the way through. I used to love to hear him do a song on the bus that I never recorded, I don't guess. It's called Face on the Barroom Floor.
Yeah, that's.
He could do Hank Williams songs that people never heard. I mean,
Yeah.
The Drifter and things like that, and know every word too. I don't know how you remember all that.
One of the sharpest songwriters I've ever known.
Yes,
Great song.
absolutely.
The best I've ever won.
He and I wrote a song in 5 minutes, and Elvis Presley recorded it, just because he asked me to. I mean, we were in the dark, actually, Bobby Bear, we were at his office, and he had not paid the light bill. Either that or he paid it with one of them checks that bounces. He paid me $50 a week, and mine bounces quite a bit. And we were sitting in there in the dark, and Waylon said, we need one more song for his hogs. We need one more song. So I started out on this little thing I've been messing with. I had a couple of lines on it. He said, let's finish this thing. Bam! I mean, it was over.
Yeah.
I mean, wrote it down on a piece of paper there.
It was both
And,
long.
I mean, like, that fast. I mean, the song was almost that long. And, I mean, 5 minutes we had it. He said, well, let's go record it. I said, okay.
One other thing I'd like to say about him, when he was writing, when you get to writing songs, you start writing fast anyway, trying to get it all down before you forget it. But he would draw a straight line. And I said, well, what is that line? He'd tell me every line, every word in it. And I couldn't make it out.
Yeah,
It just would be a wavy line.
That's the way we did it.
And he knew what every line, every word of it.
That was his normal handwriting now.
Well, Richie, when you probably, the Waylon sound, as we know, is probably defined by yourself and drums as much as anything. When you first started playing with him, was his stuff arranged more or less like that to begin with, or is this something you brought into the group, or did you work it out over time together? It just fell into place.
Yeah, well, he had a definite sound because the bass player would play like 16 notes, it was really driving things, and the rhythm player was they called it Rickety Rack. It was like Buddy Holly, that was Buddy Holly. So that kind of set the pattern. And then when I came to work for him, he said, I've got this sound and I want to keep it pretty much this way. So he said, just find what works, And then every now and then he would tell me something he wanted on a certain song, but I just kind of come into it slowly, basically, when I first started with it. And I remember the night, man, probably about 4 months into working with him. We were doing something pretty rocking, and we got off into it, and man, we did about 8 bars just right together, tight as it could be. Turn around, look at one another, wait till. That was it.
That was it.
That was disco music.
Discount.
It was disco music, kind of. I mean, that's what I always wondered.
That's what started disco music.
That kind of march, that y'all played,
The fours.
actually felt like a freaking shuffle half the time. I couldn't even figure out how to
Yeah,
do it.
4 bass.
Yeah.
I called it discount.
Discount, yeah.
It later acquired a title, though. It's called the Navajo Backbeat. We played the Indian reservation for years.
Yeah.
And the Indians, when Richie would start kicking the beat, they would start dancing
Huh.
to that tempo.
What was it like in Nashville, like those first years you were there, sort of before the phase with Tom, Paul, and Willie and so forth, when, say, the late 60s, how was he fitting in there?
Well, he was just kind of going through the motions of being produced, and doing kind of the songs that Chet didn't want him to do, trying to fit in. It wasn't, he was troubled by it. I knew that all along. And when he really started rebelling was when they passed him on to Danny Davis and Ronnie Light, and he knew then that it wasn't going his way at all. That's when he started being the bad boy.
But he came to Nashville with the idea of, you go along and you get along and you get your hit records. And
Yeah.
he felt like...
Well, he knew it was the step he had to take. When Chet called him after Bobby Bear had come through Phoenix and heard the band and everything like that, and when Chet called him and asked him if he wanted to be on RCA, he knew that was the step he had to take. So that was the most I ever saw him give.
What I was going to say is, I had a quote somewhere when we're talking about the outlaw thing, which Waylon again thought was a little extravagant. But somebody said something to the effect that, it says, people don't choose to be rebels, they just can't get along. And, it's not like you sit up one day and say, oh, I'm going to rebel against this. It's just like you can't get along. And it's as simple as that. It's not much conscious of it.
Well, Dave, I know you were spending a lot of time in Nashville then. Give us an idea what it was like there sort of just before Tom Paul and when they were just sort of getting the germ of the ideas that they were and sort of the context in which all that happened before they had any real impact, and then what that impact was at that time.
Well, I actually think, I will say, I think at Dripping Springs I gave Billy Joe his first respectable job. Down there at that first Dripping Springs reunion, for which you didn't get paid, I hope.
I didn't think you got paid.
No.
I don't think anybody got paid. But
Willie always got paid.
Right, exactly. You got paid your money. When there was the sense I got during that time was that you had all these guys from Texas who were just sort of gradually figuring out that Texas wasn't the South. In other words, that is, you kind of grew up thinking Texas is the South, but Texas is not the South. And there's a lot of awful sissy things about the South. And I think at that time, with Willie and with Billy Joe and with even Kinky Friedman, there's this whole period. You sort of get a chance that there's something in Texas that's pretty distinct. That Texas looks west, it doesn't look south. And this is just sort of a growing consciousness. I think I did a piece for Country Music Magazine about a DJ convention down there when Willie came back and played one time. And it was the first time that Willie did a concert at Exit Inn, and there were a lot of them. Waylon did a big concert. And it was really the first time that everybody started thinking, oh yeah, that's Texas. And I think that's really what happened. Now, the minute everybody started thinking, oh boy, that's Texas, and all went to shit. But at that moment, when you begin to really understand that Texas wasn't the South, and it was something altogether different, you just get some sense of possibility. You see a little bit of light, and you begin to get the idea you can pick the key you sing in and weird stuff like that. But anyway, I think that's really what was going on at that time. And also, I think all of these guys from Texas who probably, and I do not accept myself, tended to live a little rougher than those guys from the South, begin to feel like, that they're living among a bunch of schoolmarms, because Chet didn't like it if you acted bad, and nobody liked it if you acted bad, and the whole idea of acting bad seemed pretty appealing at that time.
I'll tell you what, though, those Allman Brothers and those guys from the South were
Yeah, well, they're
bunch of
dangerous.
badasses. Tell me, Dickie Betts and them, hey, they wouldn't even let them in Nashville.
Nashville it was a pretty prim and proper place to be working.
Yeah. You're supposed to be good and be nice, show up on time.
Absolutely.
That's why they gave Tom Paul's studio where Waylon on, they call that Hillbilly Central there in town. And that's where all the young songwriters, everybody wanted to hang.
No, the first time I met Waylon, that black bus was parked in that vacant lot right down from Glazer's.
Yeah.
Evidently it was parked there fairly permanently because of that some sort of operational problems. Everybody was sort of centered.
Well, Billy Joe, tell us about the album he did of your songs, how that came about, because that's, as I said earlier, that's kind of a landmark album for him and you and the country music business all.
I'll tell you what, it was just, I wouldn't be here probably, I wouldn't have had a career if it hadn't been for that. It's just fate, I guess, because I was down at Dripping Springs and I was in the trailer. And I was I was playing Willie the Wandering Gypsy, and me and Billy and Waylon was in the other part of the trailer, and I didn't know it. I don't know what they were doing.
We were here listening to
But Waylon come busting out of there, and somebody passed the guitar around to me, and I was playing Willie the Wandering Gypsy. He says, I got to have that song, Hoss. He said, He said, is that your song? I said, yeah, it's my song. He said, you got any more of them cowboy songs? I said, yeah, I got a sack full of them. Because I was cowboying then, you know, and I said, he said, well, come on up to Nashville and by God, I'll cut a whole album. And I took him up on it. I thought he meant it. And of course, I went on up to Nashville and chased him around for 6 months. And I like starved to death trying to get to him. And one night, Captain Midnight let me in, back door of RCA, and Waylon would have made it without me, without my songs. He would have made it. He was going to make it. I just happened to be persistent enough to get in there. But he come out of the control room, and he had these bikers around him, and the whole line of walls was lined with women. I'm talking about knee deep, good looking too. None of them would look at you for nothing. They was all looking at Waylon. Here comes Waylon out and swearing out, and I hollered at him, and I said, Waylon, and I was down to it, and I'd been drinking some too. I'd never done it. I said, Waylon, if you don't listen to these songs right now, I'm going to whip your ass right here in front of everybody. Of course, I knew I couldn't do it, but them old boys, them bikers come at me. And Waylon stopped them. He said, no. And he come up there and he grabbed me by he pinched my arm so hard, I believe I can still feel it. He pinched my arm so hard, he said, come here, boy. He took me in that back room back there and he set me down. He said, by God, I'll tell you what, you almost got yourself killed. And I said, I know. I said, but I've had it. You know, I said, you told me this. He said, yeah, but he said, everything that I say ain't true. He says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do with you. He said, I know that one song, Willie, and I'll do that song. He said, I'll eventually do that song. He said, you sit down here and you start singing me songs. I had my guitar with me because I didn't have nowhere else to put it. He says, you sing me one song. He said, if I stop you, then you leave, and that's the end of it. So I sang him 05 and Diamonds. He didn't stop me. He said, go ahead. I did Ain't No God in Mexico, and Honky Tonk Heroes, and by that time I done had him. You know, and he said, well, let's do this, you know. Sure enough, he did. He bucked the whole system. Chet was so mad at him he could have killed it. And I got to give it to Waylon, because boy, when Waylon made up his mind about something, he'd do it. He said, this is what I want to do. I'm making an idiot out of myself. Almost every day I'd have arguments with him, and we'd almost fight every day. And here I am, just walked into town, and I didn't have sense enough to know that I'd been blessed. I thought the guy was messing my melodies up and stuff, but he was like making them better. And I have to tell you the truth, on Ain't No God in Mexico, I got stumped on it, and I couldn't finish the last part of it. And he finished it, and I said, well, man, you get half right. He said, no, man, just keep it. Well, he was that kind of guy.
I thought you guys were going to come to blows on Honky Tonk Heroes. Because the way we cut it, you know, it starts out slow and then it stops. And so we cut it in 2 sections. We cut the slow part. And then we stopped, and Billy Joe came in, what the hell are you doing to my songs, man? Just sit down and listen.
Shut up, man. I mean, I didn't know you were supposed to be nice and lay back and stuff. You know, I thought it's a wonder he went ahead and did them. We're lucky.
I want to say one thing about Waylon Jennings, that he was the first trendsetter as far as when a songwriter would walk into an artist, usually they would say, okay, well, I got to have part of the publishing, this, that, and let's start feeding off of it. And from the day I knew him until the last day I ever saw him, I don't think he ever asked anybody for the publishing or part of their song.
How you care about money, really?
No.
And
he has had better ethics than 80% of the people in the music business, as far as that. He was not couple times on my songs, I'd give him a song, you know, and I don't think he ever recorded anybody's song, he didn't change something.
Yeah, he'll change something in there.
Yeah, but, you know, it's 2 or 3 times I thought he deserved to put his name on it, he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it, and he always made it better. When he changed the line,
Yeah.
it was always better.
He told me, he said, that's what you meant to say.
Did he ever listen to anybody in the studio? I mean, did he take any of your suggestions?
Oh, yes, he was
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
He would try to do what the songwriter did. He would try to get as close as he could to what the songwriter did and bring himself into it. But for a guy that when you'd hear him sing your song, you'd swear up and down that he wrote it. You say, man, he wrote that song. I didn't write that song, did I?
I don't think there was ever, even on the worst of times, that we weren't having fun.
It was fun, I tried.
Never was there a
Yeah,
time
it
I
was
can remember when it was.
Shel Silverstein and all that guy, girl, they get me so tickled. I couldn't.
On this time, we were running that down, and we kept having problems on the front end, the way he was phrasing it, and the way I was playing it. We'd get kind of turn the beat around, and he said, "Oh bullshit, this song ain't good." Threw it down. He said, "Let's go on to something else." And I went to him and I said, "No," I said, "let's do it one more time, Hoss. I know what you're doing, and I'll just change what I'm doing." And so we did it. We took one more take, and that was his first #1 record.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying is really special about Waylon, because I have watched a lot of singers in studio, usually like, well, let's take Tom Paul. With Tom Paul, if you had an idea, you had to present it to him and then wait until he had it. You know, there's this little period in there,
Yeah.
you have this bad idea until Tom has the same idea that's really good.
Yes.
But if you told Waylon a good idea, his ego was not so involved that he wouldn't just take it right there.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, here you go.
Richie, you're credited as producer or co-producer on some of the records from this period we're talking about. What did that entail? Did Waylon pretty much produce himself and put your name on it, or I mean, to what extent was he produced by Jack Clement, say, on?
Waylon did
or
Waylon
by
himself. Yeah, he was. I mean, as far as producing, you don't really produce him. You just help him, guide him through the things. He was. He knew what he wanted to do. The Jack Clements thing. I mean, that was a learning experience. Waylon learned from people, man.
I was up there with some of
That's
those.
right.
I'm on board.
Just like Dreaming My Dreams, we cut that thing 22 times, and the record is the second cut we did. We just kept, Jack just kept taking him back to it. Waylon knew it, we already had it, but he learned a lot of stuff from Jack. I think that's why he let Jack go, because he just was picking up stuff.
Well, Jack helped him empty out the records a little bit, didn't he?
Simplicity, yeah. That's what I mean. He was learning those things from Jack.
Jack, we all learned a lot from Jack.
Really.
And before we ever worked with Jack, Waylon always talked about getting with Jack, because we all learned a lot from Jack when Jack was in Memphis.
Yeah.
And the record we all grew up learning, and what we all learned about was things that Jack Clement had done. And Jack just confirmed what Waylon already knew.
Absolutely.
Well, did Waylon like making records, or did he prefer playing live more?
No, he loved the studio. Yeah, we had in the '70s when we did a lot of those albums. We leased a studio there for about 4 years. We come in off the road and go straight to the studio. We didn't even go home. We might be in the studio 3 days after we got into town. I think that's why my wife left.
Wonder why. Was there a lot of stuff cut that's still never come out at that
Yeah.
time? That should come out, I mean, that's of high enough quality, you think?
Oh yeah.
They just released 2 of mine last year that came up, we were cut in '72.
Wow.
That's one thing on his later contracts. He had, we turned in the album and whatever outtakes we had were his. So there's a lot of stuff.
Do any of you know what's gonna happen, Buddy, or Richie, know what's gonna happen with that stuff?
There's no plans right now for anything like that. But he went in and got all the masters. He owns all the masters from the state of RCA. They think they do, but he has them.
Well, and that's 99% of the time.
Yeah, he does possession that he owns.
Well, and that RCA stuff would be considerably enhanced just by being mixed by grown-up, you know.
Absolutely.
True.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
Lenny, when you started the book with Waylon, had you known him before that? Did it take long to sort of get him to open up? And how was he talking about the less flattering aspects of?
I got Waylon at probably the perfect time for him to tell his life story. He'd been in his rise, his fall, his rise, his fall. It wasn't too early, and it was at the moment in time before he had to start getting off the road. He was starting to feel a little ill, and I remember one night in Connecticut he told me he really wasn't liking what he was hearing from his body, but he was still out there, 120 nights a year on the bus playing great shows. And I think it was a good time for him to reminisce. I'd met him for about 30 seconds once at the record plant in, I think, 1978. He was there. I think we talked about something, but, it wasn't anything. He had been through 2 writers when I went down there. One, the first writer, had kind of tried to out-hip him, which is impossible. And the second one, he'd been around the block with, he knew really well, so there was no sense of challenge. And I think, I felt very much as, say, a record producer does to an artist, where, you're effectively functioning as a mirror. I think he liked the fact that I wasn't remotely connected with Nashville, that I was from a kind of relative music, and that I was a player. The first thing I told him when he finally agreed to see me at 8 o'clock in the morning, whenever he wanted to see me, was, I said, I know there's a lot of sex and drugs in your story, and we love those tales, but, I'm a musician, and I want to know why you get up on that stage 200 nights out of the year, what keeps you going, and what makes you love the music as much as you do. And he said, well, you can get on the bus with me then. And we immediately went to Wichita, Kansas, which was somewhat like the moon to me. I'd never seen anything like it. We had dinner with Johnny Western there, Have Gun Will Travel. I was way excited. And we just started talking. He was really punctual. The first day, he said, well, let's meet at 1:45. I said, okay, so I'm, in my room there getting this together. All of a sudden, like 10 seconds before 1:45, there's a bang on the door. He said, well, are you ready? And he was great. He really opened up to me. I think he wanted to tell his story, which is half the battle. And he had quite a story to tell. And I had total respect for him. He, talking about his, thing with the producers, or like listening to people or taking ideas, he never really told me anything, or had to. I mean, I read him the entire book. He didn't like reading that much, so I read him as it kept on going, each chapter and everything. He didn't change anything. We knew his story. He liked the fact, he didn't know too much about me when he started, but as he kept finding out different weird things, or if we go to a Nashville party and some of the younger Nashville artists would come up and talk about Patty or something, he liked that. And he really trusted me. He loaned me his Jaguar when we were in Nashville so I could ride around and pretend I was him. And, it was...
Force you to play pinball?
He didn't force me to play pinball, but, the nice thing about it was at the end of the book, he always talked, you got to get up and pick with us. And I said, sure, knowing that I'm, going to get that, And, he never did. And then at the end of the book, we're out in Long Island one night. He says, well, come on up on the stage. And I said, okay, what song? He said, oh, you're in from the get-go. And so I'm up there, never played with him before, and I had to do it, and he liked that. But he was really open and honest. He was honest about his mistakes, his personal rises and falls. He was very honest about his drug use and his wild times and his transcendence of them and how long it took him to come back from that. And, in the end, he really believed in what he was doing. The little song that's in the front of the book, I Do Believe, he really had a faith. And it wasn't like some specific religious dogma. He had a faith in the music and how it set him free and how it made him become himself, which, to me is what music and art's about. You have your creative divides within you, and then you kind of make yourself whole. And I really do feel like by the end of the book, he had told his tale in the way he wanted to tell it. And it was, the last word in the book is tomorrow, and that's really what Waylon was about. He liked the past, but he always was, what song is he working on now, and what show is coming up tomorrow? He was a really, really wonderful guy, and I feel totally privileged and honored to have helped him tell his story.
Was he, did you have that report right from the beginning? You think did it take a while to work it up?
No, he liked me. I'm pretty easy. I got a good sense of humor. I didn't complain. I was happy to meet Tammy Wynette and Connie Smith. I was like, whoa. And my enthusiasm for his world was there. I got along great with Jesse. He was really open. And I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't like, trying to get some weird tales out of him or anything, or trying to be cool. I just was, digging the world. And I was into the world. I was, as much as I liked the outlaw tales, because that is like, I was really interested in what Nashville was like in the 60s with line boys and, that whole social scene before it became, before rock and roll came to it. I think that was an important thing, Richie. It wasn't like he became a rock and roller, but all of a sudden, you didn't have to do 3 songs in 3 hours. You could take your time, think about it. Yeah. You could break out of the mold. And I dug that because it became a world music then. But there was something about Nashville in the 60s when it was really insular and really country music that I dug. And each step of the way, we were able to explore that whole thing. There was time in the 80s where he was uncertain about himself. That must be hard for an artist, especially, getting into the midlife. Do you have something to offer to, the kids out there? And the thing I really dug most about it, coming from the outside as a rock and roller, is looking at his audience and seeing that there were, teenagers all the way up to, people in their 70s. It was a spread that you really never get to see at a rock concert. And I thought, and he's speaking to them all. Because country music is like simple, honest, and about the people, love of the common people. And he's the real deal.
Yeah, also as a journalist, I was only one artist who's like Waylon, and is Tom Waits in this sense that he really liked to show you his world. I must have done 2 weeks doing that terrible pinball circuit around the age of freaking Nashville. I can still remember, he really liked introducing you to that. Make you take some of those pink pills and stay up and play pinball for 4 days. I still remember him taking me, remember that room, Billy, in the back of the Burger Boy, the private pinball room?
Yeah.
It was like a kid showing you his secret place, there's 2 pinball machines here.
All night long.
Yes, exactly.
3 nights in a row.
But he kind of had a sense that this is Waylon world, and he was going to show you this stuff. And that was very nice. And really, except for Tom Waits, I've never known a musician. Tom would take you around Santa Monica and show you that really crap.
He liked showing me around Littlefield. He had such fun taking this New York hippie around Littlefield, getting me the hamburger that was so burnt. That's the way a hamburger should be. It's dead.
Whataburger right down here is where that starts.
That's right.
I seen him in there one night. He'd been there about 3 or 4 days, And he had them old road stomping boots, you know, them old pointed ones. And he said, boy, my feet's killing me, I can't get my boots off. And I had a little razor blade there. I said, he said, give me that. And he took it and he just went like that, and blood just started spurting. and then he did the other one, and blood spurted out of that, and he just stand there in a pool of blood. He said, boy, that feels all right. I don't know what he did about his feet.
I'm sorry the mayor's not here for that story.
Buddy, how did he feel about his kids becoming musicians or going into the music business? Or, I know Scooter's leads a band in L.A., a rock band.
He was very behind Shooter. Anything they wanted to do, he was behind. He just didn't want them to have to go through everything he had to go through. And that was where he stood on the whole thing. And he supported Shooter and everything. That's the reason he did the Lollapalooza tour, was because of Shooter.
Uh-huh. Did you go on that tour at all? Did you see any of it?
I went to one show in Indianapolis.
How did
And
it
it
go?
was different seeing him out there and people in the mosh pit. But James Hetfield from Metallica, they refused to do the tour unless they booked him on. And they were real big supporters of his music.
There was a lot of them.
And Shooter had a lot to do with him doing it. Because he was into that kind of music and everything.
And Shooter's the only musician among them.
Don't know what we tell about it.
Yeah, the one you're talking about. Is the rest of the family in the music business, or
Not
like
really.
yourself? But
Not really. Rest of them live here in Texas. Jesse's daughter Jennifer, she writes a little bit, but the rest of them, they don't.
Okay, and I also want to ask some of the people that knew him the longest, Richie and Buddy and Billy Jones, and that were around him all the time. Did he change very much himself over the years as his his position in the
I don't
music
think
biz
he did.
changed, and we were talking earlier about his ups and downs and stuff. Was he?
I don't think he did.
No. His ideals and the way he approached his music stayed the same all the way through.
How did he feel later though, when he was in the 80s and 90s? When he was basically doing the same thing, but they weren't gold records anymore,
He
or
said
they
that
weren't like arenas.
he said he didn't want to be number one in nothing anymore. That this band that he had put together the last 3 or 4 years, he said that was the first time that he was out there having fun. And that's
He
what,
was.
and that's where he was at that time, was to have fun. He wasn't out, it was a band thing, it wasn't out anymore. And that's,
How the shows changed during that time, Richard?
Well, when I came back in '98, when we put the big band together and everything like that, it was all casino man. That's why he liked to work, because everything was right there, and good venue. And he, like Buddy said, and I hadn't seen him in all the years. I've never seen him laugh that much on stage and enjoy it as much as he did. And the live album we cut, that was totally a band thing. It was not Waylon Jennings. I mean, all the royalties and everything was split equally right down the line. And and he was having fun, and he just wanted it to be a band, and he was having a ball.
Yeah, he told me once, he said, no matter what you say or do, singing's better than roofing. And so, I mean, it's kind of, better than cotton picking, it's better than roofing, so as bad as it gets, that's what it is. I think the only change I ever saw was that, and we're talking about that period in the late 60s and early 70s, and this holds true for Willie and a lot of those people. You go through this period where you think, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? Am I stupid? And then you wake up one morning and say, oh, nothing wrong with me, there's something wrong with them. You know, and this is a big door to walk through, and if you come from way back in the back and beyond, it's never occurred to you, you might be smarter than they are. And the minute you figure that out, it's very liberating. And I think that really happened in the mid-70s.
It did. Nashville was in trouble when Waylon figured it out.
Boy, he was a genius, really was.
Yeah.
He must have had a terribly high IQ. I can't imagine how high his IQ.
Well, I don't think that he set out to destroy anything.
No.
His philosophy was that there was two ways of doing things, their way and your way, and their way wasn't working. And all he says, let me try it my way one time. If it don't work, we'll go back to your way. Well, it worked.
Okay, is there anybody out there that has any questions for any of the panelists? Go ahead.
Yeah, just wondering if any of the people that played with him remember what song or perhaps the year that he really started doing what's been called his chicken picking guitar playing style.
I guess that was when I was with him, because Richie had just left, and about half the band had left. And I went to Calgary with him, got up there, and we only had about 3 people to play. And he kept saying that we had to get a drummer. He said, I got to have drummers. I got this friend of mine named Eddie Fox that went up and played with him. And then Eddie hired his brother, that's who started playing bass. But when we got back to Nashville, we were standing in the parking lot at RCA one day and said, well, who do you think we ought to get to play guitar? I said, well, you. Oh, I don't play good enough, he said. So that's when I said, well, if I play rhythm under you, then I'll let you go where you want to go. So that's kind of where he started doing it. And James Burton, he came around, walked around for about 2 weeks and showed me this little slide. And he said, look what James Burton showed me. He said, that one little slide that he did.